A number of you may have heard on the news coming over as I did that finally, after a very lengthy trial, a verdict was finally reached in the case in Los Angeles. The verdict was sort of a mixed verdict in the sense that there was guilt found on some charges and innocence found on others. Well, that's gotten quite a bit of publicity and quite a bit of attention and stirred a lot of controversy and a lot of emotion. And all sorts of people have opinions on the subject, very few of whom, of course, know all that many of the detailed facts. But certain things have been shown and certain things have been said and repeated. Now, it's interesting because the verdict is going to be greeted with some people are going to be upset and they're going to dislike it and disagree with it, and others are going to be sort of about half satisfied, and others are going to be feel somewhat satisfied and vindicated. People are going to have a range of opinions as a result of that. Now, the Apostle Paul made a statement in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 4. 1 Corinthians chapter 4. In verse 4 he said, "I know nothing by myself, yet am I not hereby justified, but he that judges me is the Lord. Therefore judge nothing before the time, until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness, and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts. And then shall every man have praise of God." Jesus Christ is ultimately going to bring to light the hidden things of the hearts, we're told. Now, we live in a world, and certainly in a community and in a society, there are judgments that have to be rendered and have to be passed for society to function. This is not our world. This is not God's world in that sense. Satan the devil is the god of this world. We live in a world that is rent with all sorts of problems and all sorts of discords and all sorts of difficulties. And this is not the time that we're going to be able to straighten all of those things out, nor is it the time that we are fully prepared and that we're capable of judging. Because ultimately we're told that Jesus Christ is going to come and He will bring to light the hidden things of the hearts, the hidden counsels of the hearts. You see, no matter how sincere, when a group of people sits on a jury and they try to see into the hearts of other human beings and try to determine what was his motive, why did he do it, what was he thinking, they're very limited in their ability to do that. You and I can look at one another and we can try to determine what is someone's motive, what is his, why is he doing this, what is his purpose, what is he thinking. And again, we're very limited. God does not have those limitations, and Jesus Christ is going to come, and ultimately the world is going to be judged. Now, in terms of the people of God, we find that there's something a little bit different. In 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 17 we're told, "For the time is," not shall come or will come in the future, the time is come, that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel of God? The Scripture talks about the fact, and there are many things, in fact we may go into some things in 1 Peter 4 at a later date, but the time of judgment for the people of God, God's people are under judgment right now. God is in the process of sorting out and of sifting and of judging His people right now. The time when Jesus Christ returns is going to be a time when the world will be under judgment, but we are undergoing God's judgment right now on a daily basis because we are in that circumstance, in that situation. There are many things that we could look and take heed to understand, many things that apply to us because obviously the whole Bible does. But I want to focus our attention in on some things today because we need to understand and understand more and more deeply that we are living in what the Bible terms perilous times, difficult times. That's what Paul told Timothy. He said, in the last days, know this, that in the last days perilous times shall come. And he goes through and he details some of the peril, some of the adversity, some of the difficulty. We are going through times that you and I are not capable of navigating for ourselves. You and I are not capable of steering ourselves through these times through which we're living. There is only one who is capable of bringing us through unscathed. There is only one who is capable of bringing us through and up to that point of the resurrection when we will receive the reward that Jesus Christ brings with Him. There are many warnings and admonitions for God's people, and in the almost 6 years that I've been here, there is a section here in Matthew 24 that we have gone to, and I have gone to many times. And I will continue to go back to it because it is something that is very appropriate. It is something that I have called to our attention on at various occasions. As Jesus Christ answered questions from His disciples about the end of the age and the time and the things that pertain to that, He said in Matthew chapter 24, in verse 10, He spoke of a time when many shall be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Now, when He's talking about people being offended, you know, the whole impact of Christ's address is to His disciples. He is responding to the questions His disciples asked. He is talking about offenses among His disciples. He's talking about some of them becoming offended. He's talking about some of them betraying one another and hating one another. The very group that ought to be characterized by the love of God shed abroad in their hearts. The very group of people that ought to exemplify God's love, that ought to exemplify the attitudes of Jesus Christ. There was going to come a time, as it is brought out right here in Matthew 24, in the context of the end time, then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Now let's look at that a little bit. Iniquity shall abound. Love shall grow cold. Iniquity, the word iniquity means lawlessness, and that is the term in the Greek language. Because lawlessness, a disregard for the law of God. Because lawlessness shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. There are many in the religious world who seem to think that law and love are a contrast. Many, of course, certainly the Protestant world speaks of that and thinks that the law is done away. They think that the law is done away and all you need is love. Well, if it weren't for the law, you wouldn't know what love is. Because the law of God is what defines love. And when respect and regard for the law abounds, when disrespect and disregard for the law abounds, love grows cold. Because love is an outgoing concern. And the law tells you how to treat others. And when people are careless of the law, they are self-centered in their approach. They are self-focused in their approach, and that is the opposite of an attitude of love. And that has always been the case. And the two go hand in hand. Now, Christ warned, He talked about enduring to the end. He talked about false prophets rising and deceiving many. Now that ties in. I want to just turn back in Matthew 17, or to Matthew 7, because, nobody shows up claiming to be a false prophet. Nobody shows up, a little sign around his neck, I am a false prophet, and I am here to deceive the people of God. Everybody tells you that he's telling the truth. Everybody. Now Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7, in verses 13 and 14, he talked about the straight and narrow way. And in verse 15 of Matthew 7, he said, beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ravening wolves. Oh, so the false prophets show up in sheep's clothing. So, looks like a sheep. Says he's a sheep. That's no proof of anything. False prophets show up in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ravening wolves. Now the problem is, you and I can't look on the inside, can we? Christ is going to make manifest the counsels of the heart when he comes. What are we to do? Everything look alike? Well, let's go on. Verse 16, you shall know them by their fruits. Now, you can't look on the inside of anyone, but you shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that brings not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits you shall know them. Not every one that says unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father which is in heaven. Now we're beginning to get down to the key. What are these fruits? Many shall say unto me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and in your name have cast out demons, and in your name done many wonderful works? Oh, we did all these nice things and all these great things, and we preached and we did this and we did that. Is that the fruit that he's talking about? No. Verse 23, Jesus said, then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity. Lawlessness. You see, the real key and the real crux has to do with the law of God. Ultimately, the crux of a false prophet is he's one that does not speak according to the law and to the testimony. Isaiah 8:20 tells us that. If they speak not according to the law and to the testimony, it's because there's no truth in them. You see, that's the key, that's the crux. And there may be all sorts of wonderful works and all sorts of things that people may look at and say, well, that looks pretty good. He's doing this or he's doing that or saying this or saying that. The issue has to do, ultimately, with working and practicing and advocating lawlessness. Disregard for the law of God. Because the law of God is tied in very directly with the love of God. And the love of God that needs to be manifest among the people of God. You see, we're told in 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15, study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You've got to go through, the Bible is written here a little, there a little, you've got to put it together in a proper way. So we have to rightly divide the word of truth. We're told to shun profane and vain babblings. They will increase unto more ungodliness. And their word will eat as does a canker. It'll eat like a canker sore, eat like a cancer. Verse 19, the foundation of God stands sure, having this seal, the Lord knows them that are his. And let every one that names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. So again, we get back to the law of God. And the fact that is fundamental and foundational. The law of God. Now notice the other part of the foundation. The foundation stands sure, having this seal. Number one, the Lord knows those that are his. God knows who's who and what's what. The key is the recognition that God knows who's his. What should we do? We should depart from iniquity. Put sin out of our lives. Didn't we just come through the days of unleavened bread? And that was the message, that was the emphasis. It's a time to come out of sin, to put sin out of our lives. Verse 20, in a great house, they're not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, some to honor, some to dishonor. Well, here the church is being compared to a great house. We're told they're vessels that are used for in a very special and honorable way, vessels that are put on display, vessels that are set out when you're trying to put on a great elaborate occasion. And they're vessels to dishonor. They're vessels that are used as the compost bucket and the slop jar, and they're vessels for dishonor and they're vessels for honor. Now, there's one difference, verse 21. You see, we are living vessels, and we have something to say about what kind of vessel we are and how we will be used. The vessels in a great house are just inanimate objects, and they don't have any determination as to whether they will be used one way or the other. But you see, we're told, if a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet or fitting for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. Flee also youthful lusts, follow righteousness, faith, charity, or love, peace with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart, but foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. For the servant of the Lord must not strive, argue, and be contentious, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness, instructing them that oppose themselves. Because ultimately, when somebody is tangled up, they're hurting themselves. They're opposing themselves. They're against their own best interest. If God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth, and that they may recover themselves from out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will. Paul describes here to Timothy a sorting process that is going on and an approach that needs to be taken. Not an approach of strife and contention and argument. Because ultimately what we have to understand is whatever problems we are facing and going through as God's people, our enemies, our adversaries, are not other people. The Apostle Paul makes it very plain in Ephesians 6:12 when he says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against wicked spirits in high places." You see, we have to put on the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Our adversary is not another human being or a group of human beings. Our adversaries are certainly not one another. In that sense, our adversaries are not people in the world. Our adversary is Satan the devil. There's an interesting statement that a lot of times we don't think about, brought out back in the book of Job, chapter 1. Just call your attention to one verse here. Job chapter 1 and verse 6. We're told, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." Now here it's speaking of the angels coming before God. The angels, the sons of God, came together to present themselves before God, and Satan, or the adversary, because that's what the term means in the Hebrew, the adversary came also among them, or literally in the midst of them. Now, there's a principle there. When the sons of God come together, the devil inevitably seeks to come into their midst. He doesn't show up with a sign on saying, I'm the devil and I'm here to deceive you. But when the sons of God come together, we're told that Satan, the adversary, is quick to come into their midst. He comes into their midst because he really likes to portray himself as being also a son of God, an angel of light. Isn't that what we're told in 1 Corinthians chapter in 2 Corinthians chapter 11? Isn't that what we're told? That why does Satan come among the children of God? Because we're told that Satan tries to transform himself as though he were an angel of light. He doesn't acknowledge himself for what he is. He's a liar and the father of a lie. He is a murderer from the beginning, a liar and the father of a lie, Jesus said. So Paul wrote to the church in Corinth in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. He wrote to them in verse 14 that no marvel Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it's no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So, Satan does not believe in truth in packaging. He doesn't label things for what they are. He is quick to come into the midst of the people of God, the sons of God, representing himself as an angel of light. Paul had to warn the Corinthians in verse 13 of false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And he said that shouldn't be a surprise, a shock, because Satan tries to transform himself into an angel of light instead of a bringer of darkness. So he said in verse 3 of 2 Corinthians 11, he told the Corinthians, the church at Corinth, that he was jealous over them with a godly jealousy. He was really protective of them. And I think that reflects a right and a godly attitude that any true minister of God would have for the flock that God has entrusted, the desire to present them to God as a chaste virgin, unscathed, unsullied, very protective. But Paul had a concern as he told the church in Corinth. He said, I fear lest by any means as the serpent beguiled Eve, clever, crafty, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. Because Jesus Christ came with a simple teaching. There is a simplicity in Christ. And Paul was concerned in their behalf. For if he that comes preaches another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if you receive another spirit, which you've not received, or another gospel, which you've not accepted, you might well bear with him. This is actually asking a question form. That's sort of the way it should be rendered. In other words, he's saying, look, if somebody comes and they're presenting another Jesus, another spirit, another gospel, then you need to examine that. He brought this out as the serpent beguiling Eve. Now we could go into this. In fact, perhaps at some time we will, in terms of 2 Corinthians 11:4. What was the other Jesus that was being presented to the Corinthians? What was this other spirit and this other gospel? In what ways was a substitute being made? But you see, the point is that Satan transforms himself into an angel of light. He seeks to come in among the sons of God when they come together and to transform himself into an angel of light. But ultimately here we see that he is not. You know, Satan is a liar and the father of a lie. We're to serve God in sincerity and truth. And that's not only for the days of unleavened bread, that's for every day of our life. The 7 days of unleavened bread, 7 is there to picture completeness. And so in that sense, we symbolize that every day of our lives we're to be taking in of sincerity and truth, which is the opposite of lying and deceit and malice. And as we've already said, Satan being a liar and the father of a lie, the very opposite of that is brought out in Isaiah 8:20 when it says that to the law and to the testimony. See, how do you recognize a lie? How do you know? Because it's subtle, it's clever. That's the way we're warned. Isaiah 8:20 tells us to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no truth in them. The law of God. The law and the testimony. Now we're told in Revelation chapter 12, as we get closer to Pentecost, we'll look more at the law and to the testimony. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 10. Verse 9, we read of that old dragon, that great dragon being cast out, that old serpent, the devil and Satan, who continually, seeks to make his presence to come in among the sons of God when they appear in heaven. Why does he keep going there? He likes to come in among the sons of God, presenting himself as though he were something that he was not. What do you think he does? What does he do while he's there? Notice verse 10. Because the time's going to come, God's going to say, look, I'm not going to put up with your presence anymore. Out you go. But God's tolerated that. God's allowed Satan to come in among the sons of God there in heaven, down through years and through centuries. You read of 2 occasions that he literally did so there in Job. You read of another occasion back in, was it 1 Kings? One of the accounts with Ahab and Jehoshaphat. I won't go into that one. But notice what he does. Why does he come? One of the main reasons is brought out in verse 10. I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God day and night. Oh, why does he come? What does he do? Well, he accuses the brethren. He is there continually to point the finger, to accuse. He accuses day and night. He accuses day and night. And when he comes in among the people of God, when he comes in among the sons of God, what does he want to do? He comes in to accuse. He comes in to sow discord. Now let's understand what discord is. We sometimes use terms and we don't realize, the word discord is actually only translated, the English word discord in the King James Bible is actually only translated a couple of times in the book of Proverbs. But the Hebrew word that's translated discord is used a number of times in the book of Proverbs, as well as some other places in Scripture, primarily in the book of Proverbs. So, what we need to look at, if we want to understand what it involves, is let's go back and let's look a little bit at this term, because ultimately Satan is the one who is the accuser of the brethren, and that's ultimately what discord involves. I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. In Proverbs chapter 6, where we're told in verse 16, these 6 things does the Lord hate. Yes. Let's go back to verse. Let's come back up here to verse 12, because we'll pick it up the context. As I say, this word is actually translated as discord twice, and then it's translated with synonyms elsewhere. In verse 12 it says, a naughty person, a wicked man, walks with a froward mouth. Now froward means one that's out of control. One of the characteristics of a naughty person, a wicked man, is someone that has a mouth that's out of control. He winks with his eyes, he speaks with his feet, he teaches with his fingers. In other words, he points, he accuses. He winks with his eyes, you know. Oh yeah, sure, yeah. I'm sure he's right, you know, sort of roll his eyes and make all these signs and signals to just sort of indicate that he doesn't believe someone else. Frowardness is in his heart. He devises mischief continually. He sows discord. Well, here's the guy that does that. The guy with the out-of-control mouth. Therefore shall his calamity come suddenly. Yes, suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. These 6 things does the Lord hate. 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look, a lying tongue. Now, you know, that's the way Satan started out. What transformed Lucifer into Satan started with pride. Pride puffs up. It lifts up. It gives an inflated idea of importance, self-importance. A lying tongue. A lying tongue. Satan, of course, is a liar and the father of a lie. Hands that shed innocent blood. He was a murderer from the beginning. The spirit of murder, the spirit of violence, of hatred. A heart that devises wicked imaginations. What you have here is the progression of Satan. A heart that devises wicked imaginations. Comes up with all sorts of plots and schemes. Feet that are swift in running to mischief. Hurries to do his dirty work. A false witness that speaks lies. He is not one who bears testimony of the truth. He is not a reliable witness. He misrepresents, he twists, he distorts. He that sows discord among the brethren. That spreads trouble in a family. That's another way of paraphrasing. He that sows discord among brethren. He that stirs up trouble, or that spreads trouble. Now let's go on back here. Let's follow through Proverbs, because I want to show you the way this word is used, that we can understand a little more about this discord. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 12. It says, hatred stirs up strifes, but love covers all sins. Now the word that's translated strifes here is the same word that's translated discord in Proverbs 6. Hatred stirs up discord. Because the word is translated strife, it's translated contention and argument. Hatred stirs it up. So the kind of discord that we're talking about, the kind of strife, is stirred up by hatred. It's stirred up by ill will and ill motive. Love covers all sins. You know, there's a great contrast between someone who has the attitude of accusing the brethren, someone that is ready to accuse, and someone that is ready to love and to forgive. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 28. In verse 27 it says, an ungodly man digs up evil, and in his lips there is a burning fire. He goes around looking for something to accuse, something to say evil of someone else, and in his lips there is a burning fire. He just can't wait to spread it. A froward man sows strife. That's the same exact phrase that's used for sows discord back in Proverbs 6. A froward man, someone that's out of control and an uncontrolled tongue, sows strife. And a whisperer separates chief friends. So what we're looking at here is gossip. We're looking at an attitude of accusation. You know, it's one thing to discuss God's Word, and it's another thing to spread rumor and accusation about people and their motives. God is the only one who can look on the hearts of men. We all have a Bible into which we should look and must look, and out of which we will all be judged. And we will all have to give an account. Sometimes a world of problems would be solved if people talk more to God and less to one another about certain things. Here we find the description of a whisperer separating friends. A gossip, a talebearer, spreading rumors, spreading gossip, accusing, labeling people. You know, it's real easy. Labels can go, label someone, oh, well, he's a dissonant, or he's a Laodicean, or he's this, or he's that. Well, you can label someone else all you want to. You can apply labels to yourself. But there's one label that counts, and that's the label God attaches. The question is not what other people think you are, or what someone else is saying about you. The question is what God knows you are, and what God knows that I am. Because every one of us are going to have to give an account, and judgment is now on the household of God. Whisperers separate chief friends. They go around, they spread rumors, they say, oh, so-and-so is this way, so-and-so is that way. There's a vast difference between discussing the Word of God in a right spirit and talking about people behind their back. There's a vast difference, and we need to understand that difference, because ultimately Satan is the one who is the accuser. As we come on through, in Proverbs chapter 26, Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 20, where no wood is, there the fire goes out. And where there is no talebearer, the strife ceases. The word for strife here, same word we've been looking at. How do you put the fire? Fire goes out when it runs out of fuel. All the fuel is gone. Where there's no talebearer. No talebearer. Or the word here is whisperer. It's talking about a gossip. It's talking about a rumor monger. It's talking about someone that goes around talking about other people and spreading rumors and accusations, attaching labels to people. My brethren, that's not good. When Jesus Christ gave His warning in Matthew 24 that we started out with, He knew what He was talking about. He knew exactly the kinds of problems that were going to come upon to trouble the people of God. And if you believe that we are in the end time and that Matthew 24 applies, then you need to read those warnings and ask yourself how they can apply to you. We're not to read the Bible from a perspective of trying to apply it to everyone else and trying to look and see how someone else is obviously not as good as we are. We're to read the Bible looking into the perfect law of liberty as looking into a spiritual mirror. A spiritual mirror, trying to look and see how we reflect. Not simply trying to look at our neighbor. Coming on, it says here in Proverbs 26:21, as coals are to burning coals, as wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Same word. A contentious man, somebody that's just argumentative and likes to argue and to gossip. The words of a talebearer are as wounds. They go down into the innermost parts of the belly. The words of a talebearer, a gossip. People who say things about others behind their back. People who carry rumors and gossip about others. Who carry labels about others. They whisper. People who have been as close as brothers and sisters are alienated from one another. My brethren, it ought not be so. We live in a world that is rent with strife. There is a nation that was formed in the aftermath of World War I. It was called the nation of the South or Southern Slavs, Yugoslavia. It is a nation that has disintegrated within the last couple of years, and people who were fellow citizens of the same nation, who pledged allegiance to the same flag, people who in many cases were neighbors living side by side, their families having done so for years, for decades, in the same cities and villages, have become the bitterest of enemies, have become suspicious and hateful of one another. That is the state into which Satan would love to plunge the whole world. And my brethren, that is the state into which Satan would like to plunge the people of God. He's an adversary. He's an enemy. He's a whisperer. We're told right here, as we see right here in Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 25, it says, "He that is of a proud heart stirs up strife, but he that puts his trust in the Lord shall be made fat." He that's of a proud heart. Pride goes with gossip, spreading labels and things of this sort. You know, the label that we all better be concerned about is the label that God attaches to us. And that gets back, how are you going to know what label God attaches to you? Well, God gives us an entire book, the Bible, that is something that we need to be examining. We're going to look in just a moment. Let's just look at one other place in Proverbs 29:22. Proverbs 29:22, it says, "An angry man stirs up strife." Now here's our same word. It's rendered discord back in Proverbs 26. We see several things that are brought out. We see that what leads into stirring up this sort of thing? What allows an individual to play into the adversary's hand? Anger? Pride? All of these characteristics. An angry man stirs up strife. And a furious man abounds in transgression. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. Verse 25 tells us that the fear of man brings a snare, but whoso puts his trust in the Lord shall be safe. Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment comes from the Lord. Oh, people can play politics, and that's been around for a long time. Many seek the ruler's favor. Well, they try to get in good here and there, and they try to play favorites, and they try to play politics, and they try to look and always be on what they perceive is going to be the winning side. Well, I'm going to tell you which side's going to win. That's God's side. God's the winning side. Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment comes from the Lord. The fear of man brings a snare. If your primary concern is what people think, it's going to entrap you and entangle you, but if you put your trust in the Lord, you'll be safe. A man's pride's going to bring him low. You know it all, nobody can tell you anything. Well, to this man will I look, God says, to him that's humble and of a contrite heart and that trembles at my word. An angry man stirs up strife, stirs up argument and discord and disagreement and just... It stirs it up. We're told in James that the wrath of man works not the righteousness of God. Our struggles are not on the human level. Our struggles are on the spiritual level. If you fight your problems on a human level and on a physical level, you're going to lose, because you're wrestling against someone who is more powerful. And if you try to do it, you're going to lose. Because we have an adversary that goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he might devour. Brethren, if we deal with our problems on the spiritual level, Jesus Christ guarantees the victory. Now, I talked about labeling people. We can label various ones. We can attach labels, and so-and-so's a dissonant, and so-and-so's a Laodicean, and so-and-so's this, and so-and-so's that. The only label that counts is God's label. People talk about Philadelphia. You can call yourself that all day long. You can get somebody else to call you that. That's totally irrelevant. We could all take a vote and be unanimous, except for one, and the one that counts is God. The issue is not a matter of what people think or what we attach. The issue is what God attaches. If we want God to call us and to say that we exemplify brotherly love, then we better exemplify the attitude Jesus Christ displayed. In Matthew chapter 26, the night of Jesus' crucifixion, verse 47, we're told that while he yet spoke, Judas came with one of the 12, he came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, and the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, and he said, whosoever I kiss, that's the one, hold him fast. You see, they were coming, it was night, it was dark, here were this group of men together, and they were all within the same general age range, and just sort of normal, average-looking Jews of the day. And it was not out in the bright daylight. It was at night, and it was dark, and there were a lot of people around, and there were the light they had came from torches. And it would have been very easy to have mistaken and grabbed the wrong one. But Judas, who knew them all well, said, I will point him out. I'll come up and embrace him. In verse 49, he came to Jesus, and he said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, notice what Jesus said in verse 50. Friend, why are you come? And then they came and laid hands on Jesus and took him. How do you think Judas felt when Jesus looked him in the eye and said, Friend, why are you come? Do you think Jesus said it in a sarcastic manner? Do you think he said it in an ugly manner? I'm going to show you a little bit. Come on back to John 13. We just finished the Passover, the foot washing. In John 13 and verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he was come from God and went to God. He arose from supper, laid aside his garments, took a towel, girded himself, poured water in a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel. And so we're told, as we come on down, verse 10, Jesus said, He that is washed need not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit, and you are clean, but not all. Verse 11, For he knew who should betray him. Therefore, said he, You are not all clean. After he had washed their feet and taken his garments, they sat down, and we come on down through the story. And in verse 21, Jesus was troubled in spirit, and he said, Truly I say unto you, one of you shall betray me. And the disciples looked one to another. They couldn't figure out what he was talking about. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples whom Jesus loved. This is identified in the ending verses of John's Gospel as being John himself. And Peter beckoned to him. He motioned to John and he said, Ask him, who's he talking about? He was curious. So John asked him and said, Lord, who is it? In verse 26, Jesus said, It is he to whom I will give the sop when I've dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Satan entered into Judas, and Jesus looked at him and he said, That which you do quickly. Nobody at the table knew what he was talking about. They didn't know his intent. Brethren, what I want to point out to you is Jesus washed Judas' feet. He washed the feet of Judas. And you know what? He did it just as tenderly, just as lovingly as he washed the feet of Peter or John. He humbled himself and he washed Judas' feet, and he knew what Judas was going to do. Did he have hatred in his heart for Judas? Was he sitting there grinding his teeth thinking, you dirty, rotten so-and-so, you lying hypocrite, you followed me around all this time and now you're going to do that? Well, I ought to grab something and just knock you in the head. Do you think you and I would have had some of those other feelings that may have just sort of come a little bit naturally to us? How easily do you think you could have done? You see, brethren, we're not called to handle things naturally. Revenge is natural. Resentment is natural. Real love is spiritual. Real love is spiritual. Let's notice another example. Luke chapter 23. Luke 23, verse 33. When they were come to the place which is called Calvary, where they crucified him and the malefactors, the criminals, one on the right hand, one on the left, then said Jesus, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. The people stood beholding, and the rulers stood there deriding him. Jesus didn't rail and accuse. He said, Father, forgive them. They don't understand what they're doing. They really don't get it. Now, what does that have to do with you and with me? In 1 Peter chapter 2, First Peter chapter 2 and verse 21, it says, For even hereunto were you called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that you should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously. What did he do? He put it in God's hands. Christ set us an example as to how we need to deal with suffering, with difficulty. You fight your own battles and you're going to lose. I fight my own battles, I'm going to lose. If you put it in God's hands and you let God fight your battles, you cannot lose, because God can't lose. Now, we're told in Matthew chapter 5, let's notice here, part of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 43. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now, that's what some got out of loving your neighbor. Said, well, yeah, love my neighbor, but I hate my enemy. Jesus said in verse 44, I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven, for he makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, sends rain on the just and on the unjust. If you love them which love you, what reward do you have? Don't even the publicans do the same? If you salute your brethren only, what are you more than others? Don't even the publicans so? You're nice to people that are nice to you. You got sort of your little group, your little clique, you're nice to them, and you don't like anybody else. If that's the way we do, we're no different than anybody in the world. Everybody's got their little circle, their little group. If you salute them that salute you, the only people you say hi to are the ones that said hi to you first. Well, he said hi to me, so I'll say hi to him. He didn't speak to me, so I'm certainly not going to speak to him. Somebody doesn't speak to you, somebody has a bad attitude toward you, somebody is accusing you or saying things about you that they shouldn't. What do you do? Love them with the love of Christ. You can't love them with human love, natural love, because that doesn't come naturally. That kind of love doesn't come naturally, but it can come The love of God shed abroad in our hearts through the power of the Holy Spirit. If you salute your brethren only, what are you more than others? Don't even the publicans so? Be you therefore perfect? Be complete. Come to spiritual maturity. What is spiritual maturity? Being just like God. That's spiritual maturity. Spiritual maturity is being like God. God is love. This is the love of God, that we keep His commandments. His commandments are not grievous. Be perfect, be complete, be spiritually mature, even as your Father which in heaven is perfect. No, we are to exemplify the kinds of attitudes that Jesus Christ Himself exemplified. In John chapter 15, the night of His final Passover, the night prior to His arrest, in John chapter 15, in verse 12, He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." Not simply that you love one another. There's nothing new about that. You can go back to the book of Leviticus chapter 19 and read the statement, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." That was a part of the law from the beginning. There's nothing new about loving your neighbor. But loving one another as Christ loved us is new. Because that's the spirit of the law. That's something you and I can't do on a human level, and we can't do on our own strength, to love one another as Christ loved us. To love the unlovable. To love the unlovely. To love not only if we have love toward people that are nice to us, that's easy. If you act like a Christian in response to somebody who acts like a Christian to you, that's pretty simple. If somebody comes up and they say something nice to me, I feel like saying something nice back. Somebody walks up and they pay you a compliment, they say something nice, they do a favor for you, they show kindness. We feel like responding in a nice way. That's natural. The world is filled with people like that. There are even politicians operate under the premise, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. There's nothing inherently Christian about that. The whole world's political system operates on that basis. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. You do a favor, I'll do a favor. What Christ said was, look, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. That means you love one another when the one you're loving just isn't real lovable. When you don't feel like showing love because of something they did or something they said or the look they gave you or what you heard they were saying about you behind your back, the labels they were attaching. Well, if you want God to attach the label of brotherly love to you, then what you have to do is try to live up to the label and go to God for the help to fulfill the label in His sight. Not on the human level. It's not a matter of what we do in front of other people. It sort of impresses them, and if we can convince enough people we're this way, then we're that way. The issue is not how many people you can convince. The issue is the fact that we live our lives before God. Judgment is now on the household of God. God knows who's who. The foundation of God stands sure. Let all that name the name of Christ depart from iniquity, for the Lord knows those that are His. Judge nothing before the time. Because you see, Christ is going to come and the hidden counsels of the heart will be made manifest. Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. John 15:13. He said in verse 15, I haven't just called you servants. The servant doesn't know what his Lord does. You know, servant is given instructions and he carries them out, but he's not privy to the master's plan. We're servants, but we're more than servants, because God hasn't just given us instructions. He has made us privy to the master's plan. We not only know what to do, we know how it fits into the overall picture. We know what God is doing. But God is putting His character, His nature in us. God is producing in us the one thing that cannot be produced by divine fiat. He is producing a holy, righteous character. The very character, the very nature of God in us. Through the power of the Holy Spirit. That's what the new covenant is all about. Writing on our hearts God's laws. In our hearts and in our minds. Putting in us the very nature of God. Because we're to be a part of the family of God, ruling and reigning with Him into eternity. All things are to be put under our feet, we're told in the book of Hebrews. Paul writes. Now, we don't see yet all things. God created man in His own image, in His own likeness, with a great purpose. That purpose is shared with us. Christ said, I'm not just simply calling you a servant in John 15:15. I'm calling you friends. For all things that I've heard of my Father I've made known to you. I've shared with you. Not only the what, but the why. I've taken you into my confidence. He said, I've treated you as friends. You need to treat one another as friends. You see, we're told in Proverbs 17:17 that a friend loves at all times. And a brother is born for adversity. If we only love one another in the good times, if we only love one another when it's easy and when it's simple and when we're responding to something nice, if we only love one another in the good times, that's nothing exceptional. That's nothing unusual. A friend, a real friend, a friend loves at all times. And a brother is born for adversity. You know, in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, called the love chapter, the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13:1, he said, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not love, I'm become as sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. I'm just making noise. No matter what I say, no matter how eloquent my speech, no matter what miraculous gift I may have, no matter how eloquently I describe it and in what language I use, if love is not the basis and the essence, it's just noise. Like beating on a gong. Oh, I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries. And all knowledge. How all faith. Now, is it good to understand the Bible? Have understanding? Absolutely. Good to understand prophecy? Absolutely. A very large portion of the Bible is prophecy, and most all of it is specifically related to the end time. Great to understand it. God put it in here to be understood. We don't understand every detail and every specific thing. I think we all know that. What if you could? We're interested in that, and that's great. The disciples were. They asked Jesus, well, when? Chances are if we could ask Him a question, that's probably what we'd ask. When? Paul said, look, if you understood all of those things, you had all knowledge, you had all faith, absolute total faith. If love isn't there, I'm nothing. He didn't say you're 3/4 of a Christian or 2/3 of a Christian or half of a Christian. He said it's 0. Though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me nothing. It doesn't matter what sacrifice you make. You can be the most serving, giving person that the world has ever seen. You can be ready to lay yourself down as a martyr. But if love is not the essence and the basis of what you do, it doesn't matter. Some people can do great sacrificial things. God is not merely interested in what we do, He's interested in why we do it. Now, He's interested in both. If your motive is right, your actions are going to represent godly actions. Let's just notice just a few characteristics of love. We're told, Christ said we're to be friends. We're to be as a friend. We're to be a friend to one another. He said He's called us friends. We're to love one another as He loved us. What are some of the characteristics? How would you do this? A man that has friends must show himself friendly. How do you do that? One thing about a friend is real friendship is motivated by love, brotherly love. That's what friendship is brotherly love. Philadelphia. It means a family love. Philos is a Greek word or philia, for love. Philia is the term for love, and Delphos has to do with a family relationship. So it's the kind of love that exists in a family. It's talking about love. And right here we read of love. One of the things that we find about love, one characteristic of brotherly love, of real friendship, is that it exemplifies good manners. Now we may think that's a simple thing, and it is. That's what it says in verse 5, does not behave itself unseemly. In other words, it shows good manners. Sometimes people come up, and it's incredible to me, some of the questions that people ask other people. Prying questions, intrusive questions, questions that are none of their business. Or the unsolicited advice that people sometimes give to one another. Things that hurt someone's feelings. Something that just leaves someone feeling hurt, feeling bad, feeling put down. Love has good manners. And that would solve a lot of problems. We're polite. We have good manners. We know when to speak and when to keep silent. Someone wants to share some deeply personal, intimate thing with you, well, that's up to them to decide that. But to pry and to intrude and to try to find out, it's not good manners. To offer a lot of unsolicited advice and comments, that's not good manners. Love has good manners. We're going to be a friend. We're going to show ourselves friendly. We're going to exemplify godly love. One of the things we're going to have to do is try to work on our manners. Be more careful about what we say to others and how we say it. Not only what we say, but how we say it. Another thing about being a friend, about godly love, is it doesn't have a short fuse. Somebody that has a short fuse and it's easy to set them off, they're not a real friendly person. And it says that here too. It says in verse 5, it's not easily provoked. Not easily provoked. Talks about it in the end of verse 7, and hopes all things, endures all things. Puts up with a lot. Not quick to take offense. Love is not easily provoked. It doesn't have a short fuse. Nor is it selfish and self-centered. It wants to be served rather than to serve. That's not love. Love's not selfish and self-centered. We see that in the beginning of here in verse 4. You see, it says, love envies not. It vaunts not itself. It's not puffed up. It doesn't have this sort of inflated idea of putting the self forward and everything revolves around me and mine. It's not selfish and self-centered, not just interested in the self, but it's interested in others. Love is kind. It says that right here. Verse 4. It suffers long. See, it doesn't have a short fuse. It's patient. It's kind. Desiring to be helpful. Desiring to serve. Desiring to build up. It's kind. A kind word, an encouraging word. Something that is to help and to build up. Not to put down. Not sarcasm. Not accusation. And of course, love takes pleasure in truth, not in sin. A whisperer, a gossip, a talebearer, they don't like good news. They don't want to hear something good. They don't want to hear something positive about someone. They don't want to hear how someone helped or served, because you don't go around spreading things like that. They'd like to hear about how someone messed up, someone did something. You know, that's what we're told here, that in verse 6, that love doesn't rejoice in iniquity, doesn't rejoice in sin. It's not happy about lawlessness, but it rejoices in the truth. Love is excited about what's right, not taking pleasure in what's wrong. The whisperer, the gossip, the talebearer, the assigner of labels, the ones who separate chief friends. You know, when we do those things, that's not taking pleasure and truth and what's good and true and positive. You know, Satan is the one who is the accuser of the brethren, who accuses before God day and night, unrelentingly. He accuses. He maligns. He casts aspersions on character and motive. Oh, there's so many places and so many things that we could look, because let's just notice one place right here in terms of this sort of thing. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, Paul is talking about widows being taken into a special enrollment in the church. And he said in verse 11, the younger widows refuse. When they have begun to wax wanton against Christ, they'll marry. And he talks about in verse 13 that would be good for them to do, because in verse 13 they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, not only idle, but tattlers also, busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. Satan looks for an occasion to accuse God's people. And the principle of verse 14 is, if we're busy doing the things we ought to do, rather than being tattlers and busybodies and speaking things that we ought not, Satan doesn't have an occasion to accuse, because we're doing the things that, as Titus says in Titus, or as Paul says to Titus in Titus 2:1, are the things which are conducive to sound doctrine. Sound doctrine is a way of living. You can go through and read Titus chapter 2. We're to characterize real friendship. We're to characterize brotherly love in a world that is fragmented, in a world that is nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. The Bible is filled with warnings. It's filled with warnings to God's people. And brethren, we will either take heed to those warnings or we will fulfill those warnings. How will God label us? A vessel unto honor or a vessel unto dishonor? We're the ones who determine the label that God will attach to us. The only label that counts is the one that God attaches. And if we want God to look at us as one who exemplifies brotherly love, and I know that there are other characteristics, and I'm not trying to go into all the factors that distinguish the two final stages of the church. But one of the things that certainly stands out at the beginning is God calls things what they are. God names things what they are. He labels things. If we want to be labeled as brotherly love, we have to exemplify that, but it is the love that can only come from God, shed abroad in our heart through the power of the Holy Spirit flowing out. Not going to be as a rumor monger, as a tattler, as an accuser, as a labeler of others. Not merely being nice to those who are nice to us, and fracturing and fragmenting, but having Christ's attitude. The attitude that washed Judas' feet. The attitude that loved. We're to love one another as Christ loved us. To demonstrate and to show forth those good manners. Not having a short fuse, not being selfish, but being kind. Not taking pleasure in sin, but taking pleasure in truth. And to keep in mind, one of the things that can guard us from fitting into what Christ warned of in Matthew 24 is what Paul said in Romans 14:4. He said, "Who are you therefore that judge another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Yes, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand." Well, those whom God has called, God is working with. Judgment is now on the house of God. God knows who's who. We need to focus in on the Scriptures to know what's what and let God take care of who's who. Who are you that judges another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Yes, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. Continuing on over here in Romans, in verse 7. For none of us lives to himself, and no man dies to himself. Whether we live unto the Lord. Whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ both died and rose and revived, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. Why do you judge your brother? Why do you set at naught your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow unto me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. Let us not therefore judge one another any more, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way.